Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. It is Christmas in July, and I got a gift for everybody. Today, we are going to be talking about credibility marketing for financial advisors, something I'm passionate about, something my guest is passionate about. Callie Fedosenko, I'm sure there's a lot of people on here where she needs no introduction. There might be some people in my network where this is the first time you're meeting Callie. So, before we jump into this credibility marketing conversation, Callie, I'd love if you can talk a little bit about your story, your work, and if you can even tie in where credibility marketing has fallen into that story, that would be, I think, a good place to start.
Yeah, so I've been working with advisors. I was counting up the years before we were starting. I was like, oh, wow, for 12 to 15 years now. And yeah, it goes back to that know, like, trust. And the trust is so big. And working with advisors, there's so many opportunities in building that credibility. Um, which we're going to be talking about, but the awards and the designations and any kind of media, just your know how, right? I mean, advisors are so knowledgeable, and I think that's one of the most impressive things about you.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and by Callie, you've got to jump on me. I mean, I just celebrated Flackable's 10-year anniversary a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Big milestone, and even before that, I started my career. I mean, I'll tell everybody a little bit about my story because credibility marketing has been the whole overarching theme of my story, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
specifically credibility marketing in financial services. Um, prior to starting Flackable, I was working at a bigger independent, but still, 50, 60 person public relations agency up in New Jersey and New York. And this agency was focused on financial services. There, I represented uh, typically a lot of like mid-sized asset managers, a few big national brands that everybody would recognize. But I did get a chance to work with a handful of RIAs when I was
Mm.
working there. And this was, if everybody remembers 10 years ago, I mean, that's when the RIA movement was really taking off. We were on the heels of the Great Recession, and I think a lot of advisors realized at that point that there was an independent route. That maybe being linked and working for the big banks might not be the best way to do this business with the type of pride and the type of spirit that they want to do it in, let alone the potential for earning more,
Yeah.
bigger payouts and everything else by going the independent route. So I saw this movement going on, and I
Mhm.
looked at the PR agencies that were out there catering to advisors at the time, and no disrespect to them, but I thought it was incomplete because a
Mm.
lot of them out there were good at getting publicity for advisors,
Mhm.
but they weren't connecting the whole puzzle. They would get them the publicity, but the advisors didn't know what to do with the publicity when they got it.
Mhm.
That was where the whole genesis for Flackable came from.
Mhm.
And so while I was still working for this big agency, I had sleepless nights writing down all my ideas on a piece of paper. And eventually that turned into a business plan. And then eventually, about 10 years ago, I quit my job, launched Flackable, and have been in this space ever since. And it's funny, the first client that I signed, they approached me while I was still working at my old firm.
Yeah.
Um, because they had read an article on LinkedIn that I had published about the importance of earning and leveraging third party
Mhm.
credibility for financial advisors.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they read it and they were like, wow, this guy gets it. I wasn't even advertising that I was starting my own firm at the time. I
Yeah.
didn't know when I was going to start it. I knew I was going to start it. They reached out to me. They were like, hey, it sounds like we're philosophically aligned. I said, I agree. I'm sitting on this business plan. And a few days later, I quit my job, and 10 years later, haven't looked back. So this is a topic I'm very passionate about. And Callie, I love that you're
Yeah.
joining me on this too, because you and I, over the years, have talked about this so many times.
I mean,
What
even your story just a moment ago, like it was that knowledge that you had, and then a platform, and sharing your knowledge on that platform, which gave you that credibility and then allowed you to jumpstart
boom,
your career. Yeah.
exactly. So, Callie, I mean, you and I have had many conversations about this. We've collaborated.
Mm-hmm.
What I focus on is the one part of credibility marketing, and I feel like what your focus is really that second part. And sure, there's crossover, but me, as a public relations firm, I focus on the earning credibility part, and a
Right.
lot of that is getting my clients on TV,
Yeah.
getting them quoted in places like Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, all those places that give you that clout and that credibility factor. But like I alluded to before, PR alone is just publicity. Nobody comes to me for publicity. They want real tangible outcomes. And Callie, I mean, what you specialize, I'll actually let me pass the baton. You tell them what you specialize in this whole mix.
Yeah. So I'll go back to my background a little bit more. I started when the 12, 15 years. The first 5 were spent internally at financial firms, right? I was working in RIA offices, not only doing marketing, also opening accounts, and seeing that knowledge, right? And then applying that as I start my own firm on how can we leverage what the advisors have to connect them to their target audience. So a lot of what you do, yeah, there's like this great overlap. So I'm going to come in with somebody and I'm going to help them get established. I'm going to say, okay, based off of who you're trying to reach and your knowledge, how can we build a presence for you that shows your credibility? Then Brian's going to come in using that foundation. He's going to get you in the press. Then after you're in the press, I get you promoted out there, because that's where I'm seeing a lot of, I hate to say it, but the ball being dropped. So much is spent in getting the earned media, and then it's not leveraged as much as it could be. There are so many ways that you can be sharing it and continuing that presence that you've worked so hard to get, or Brian's worked so hard to get on your behalf, right? Because it's hard. It takes a lot of work to really build not only your presence, but a relationship with the press, which is, I mean, Brian, that's what you're so great at. You have all those connections. That's something that I don't do. I come in afterwards and help people promote it, get it out there, establish your credibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a good segue into talking about that first step, that first phase in the credibility marketing process. We already identified that credibility marketing is earning and leveraging third party credibility. And we'll talk about the leveraging part. I want to spend a lot of time talking about the leveraging part,
Yeah.
because I think that's probably where a lot of folks listening right now, I'm sure every advisor listening right now, you've had some kind of accolade. You've had some kind of award, accolade, press coverage. Maybe you get it consistently, maybe you get it from time to time, but you've had that. And there is so much that you can do with that. And that's where I think the real pain point is, and the struggle is. It's okay, once I have it, what do I do with it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a dog chasing a car. It doesn't know what to
Yeah.
do with it once it catches up with the car.
I think it's that way for a lot of assets that advisors have too, not just the earned media, but videos or blogs. Like, you've got it, but how are you using it? I think that's a huge key to being successful in your marketing.
Yeah. So why don't we first identify all of these credibility opportunities first? Because we talked about press, and I'm going to continue talking about press, and I want to really drill down into that. But credibility is not limited to just press.
Right.
There are big credibility pieces that everybody listening has already that you might not have even thought of through that lens.
Oh
So
yeah,
Callie and I
absolutely.
are going to go through and talk about all of that before we get to that next step, then what to do
Yeah.
with it once you've got it. All right. So why don't I lead off talking about press? Um,
Sure.
because that's the bulk of what I do is focused on establishing my people as thought leaders and
Hmm.
subject matter experts, trusted sources for publications, and media has obviously expanded quite a bit. It used to be the newspapers and the magazines. Newspapers and the magazines aren't going anywhere. They're changing, they're
Mm.
evolving, but they're not going anywhere. And the brands that they have built, when we're talking about New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and whatnot, they are not going anywhere. They still carry a lot of clout. They don't carry all the clout like they did 50 years ago, but they still hold a heck of a lot of clout. And to be able to be quoted, to be seen as a reliable source for those publications is a big deal. And that's what I
Because
do.
they've established credibility, right?
Totally. I
So it
mean,
kind of feeds off of each other.
when okay, let's say, new jobs report comes out. I have an advisor talks to the Wall Street Journal about the new jobs report. They give their macro view on what's going on. And they get a little, two-sentence quote in a much broader article. Is somebody going to read that and just call you
Mhm.
and say, "Oh, that's my financial advisor"? No, no,
Yeah,
can it happen?
sure.
Sure. Should that be the expectation? No, of course not. Okay, but by being quoted, you have earned credibility,
Hmm.
because the Wall Street Journal, when they quote you in that article, they are telling the world, we see this person as a credible source. We see this person as a subject matter expert.
Hmm.
That's why we're talking to them. That is the whole power that's bundled into that little two-sentence quote.
Absolutely.
Um, Now, when we're talking about industry media, I come across a lot of advisors, and I'll talk to them about the opportunities. They're like, "Oh, well, I'm not selling to other advisors. Why would I want to be in the industry publications?" Well, because it positions you as a leader among your peers.
Mm. Hmm.
Think of the most influential, the financial advisors who everybody listening to this right now, Callie and I have either worked with or come across. No, everybody else has come across them. Okay, all of the most influential financial advisors talk to the advisor trade publications.
Mm.
They do consistently, and they're constantly winning those awards. And they're constantly, not because they're marketing to other financial advisors, although some are, depending on what their
Sure.
goals are, but not because they're trying to sell other financial advisors or anything. They are positioning themselves as leaders among their peers because they are leaders among their peers.
Hmm.
So I always have to have this conversation, almost always have to have this conversation with advisors. Don't roll your eyes at the industry trade publication.
Mm.
Because if you're not being seen in the industry trade publications, why should the Wall Street Journal care what you have to say? If
Yeah.
you have not already established yourself as a leader among your peers, and now you want a national voice, it doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
So don't, and I think that's a mindset thing too. Don't think of all of this as just every opportunity as one big advertisement or marketing pitch or whatever, sales pitch. No, I mean, there is value in building your credibility. That's what we're doing. That's the product I sell, credibility.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, some other ways that I see that advisors can build credibility outside of press, but it also supports press. Actually, there's a couple things I want to address. The first one is I think a lot of times we like to think of things in their own little boxes, press, um, marketing, direct marketing, phone calls, but they all work together to create your brand, your online presence. And it's them all working together. And one piece of that is the credibility, which is a huge piece. Because why are people becoming your client, right? Another thing I want to address, so the first one is that everything works together and don't try to separate them. The second thing I want to address is I know imposter syndrome is so prevalent now, right? I mean, I deal with it. I'm sure that you have days that you deal with it, Brian. And for our guests, like, you are knowledgeable. We just want to show that. We want to show how you are able to help people. So, what are ways that we can show that? And those ways are how we're building credibility. So, having a website, you have an online presence. Do you have a Facebook? Do you have a LinkedIn? What are your prospects going to be Googling, and what would they expect to see that shows that you know your shit? Because you do. And we know that you do. We just want to share that with everybody. Other ways, there are testimonials, which is like a huge piece now that we're able to bring in. Google reviews, which again, it falls under the testimonials. Any kind of designation that you have, CFP, showing that. And then also, I mean, do your prospects even know what a CFP is? Taking time to explain, hey, I'm a certified financial planner. That means I have a fiduciary standard that I have to abide by. It also means I have to keep up with continuing education. Like, these are all qualifications that can help set you apart compared to your competition. Maybe there's other, CFP is just the one that comes to mind. There are plenty of other ones. But I think we also tend to forget that the vocabulary and terms that we use are not always known by our prospects and clients. So explaining what those are is very helpful. You definitely want to be showing up in standard places, but you also want to take a look at where are your target audience going and frequenting, and can you have a presence there? How can you be showing up and showing how you are credible? Videos, another great opportunity that's really kind of blowing up, especially those short vertical videos, right? Maybe I'm getting a little bit too much into here are things you can do rather than big picture right now.
No, it's perfect. Well, and when we talk about video, there's self-produced, which certainly gets you out there, and that should be a piece of the marketing puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about credibility,
Mm-hmm.
going on podcasts and webcasts, LinkedIn Lives, even.
Hosting or being a guest,
Yeah.
either. And then those, you can take clips, right? And that's going to help you get that earned media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you use that when you're approaching news organizations, like, hey, because the reporter, they're the one taking the risk. They want to be able to see that the person they're bringing in knows what they're talking about. And that's where all of these brand assets are going to come into play.
I need to see it. I mean,
Yeah.
me and my role, I'm not putting you on TV unless I know you're ready.
Right.
Because I'm the one who's listen. Part of my job is building these talking about trust and
Yeah.
credibility. I need to build these trusted relationships with producers. Okay, if
Mm-hmm.
I give them a dud, if I give them someone to put on TV who is terrible, it makes me look even worse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting you on TV until you're ready.
Right.
Yes, me being able to see you in a podcast situation, webcast, whatnot, I need to see that before I'm gonna put you on live TV because I'm not
Right.
taking that risk for myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and that's not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. I mean, even the client. I mean, you clearly you don't want to go on and bomb. You want to be ready. You want to be confident for that first time you go on.
Right.
So a lot of my process when and I work with a lot of folks who have never done any type of broadcast, or if they have, it's been very limited, and certainly not live TV. Um, So when I have those clients, I'll start you off with a couple of podcasts first, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll prep you before. We'll talk about it after. If you were awkward, I'm going to tell you you were awkward. That's the feedback that you need to build up to be that eventually aspire to be that
Mm-hmm.
polished guest on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a process. It's kind of
Yeah.
like building a resume. That you all have you've got your professional resume, which certainly carries credibility with it. But then you've got your credibility resume,
Mm-hmm.
beyond just places you've worked and functions you've served. Looks at the third party credibility. You've got people who have endorsed you,
Mm-hmm.
publications who have published you, places that you've been. So all of that weighs into, building that resume.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
I
not
mean,
you're not you're not going to start on the Today Show.
right. I think even just your brand presence. Do you have a consistent brand? That alone is going to give you credibility of this person is professional, this person is organized, I feel safe investing with them. Like there are everything that you're presenting more or less is how you can be building your credibility.
100%. Now, before we pivot, and again, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the leveraging component, the marketing component
Mm-hmm.
of credibility marketing. Before we pivot, a couple of things that I don't think we touched on yet
Yeah.
fall under the writing umbrella, and I want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that we talk about these before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Being a published author, whether you're self-publishing, which I know a lot of you advisors do, because it's for the right price, it's kind of easy and not easy, but it's doable, it's
Yeah.
realistic.
Right.
But publishing a book, being an author, is a big credibility piece, or being set up as a contributor somewhere. Right now, I'm working with, I think, 3 or 4 folks right now who I've set up as Forbes contributors,
Mm.
where we're doing monthly or bi-monthly articles.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this when we talk about leveraging it, but I mean they're weaving that Forbes brand into everything that a lot of the things that they do.
Yes. Yes.
It becomes part of the identity. And those contributor roles are powerful because not only do you get credibility with a contributor role, but you get influence.
Mm-hmm.
Contribute when you've got a contributor role like that. You can now set your own narratives because you are one of those writers. People are going to care about the weird angles and however your brain works, connecting dots, piecing stories together. If you're putting out good thought pieces and when I say thought piece, I'm saying like pieces that make people think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, you're going to develop a level of influence on top of that credibility,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great place to be. Callie,
Mm-hmm.
I'm handing it over to you. Let's talk about how we leverage this stuff.
Oh, love leveraging. Uh, yeah. Okay. So let's say that you got into Forbes, right? Here are a few things that you can do today. First, add it to your email signature as seen in Forbes. Even better if you link that to your article or to your TV presence. Next thing, having a press release. Press releases aren't that engaging. For me, Brian might think otherwise. I also think that creating a blog article and an email to go along with it that is direct to your clients, because everybody wants to be on the winning team. So if my advisor is in Forbes, I want to know about it because I mean, obviously I trust them because they're my advisor, but now I have another level of trust of like, wow, it's not just me, someone else believes in you too. I'm on the winning team and I want to share that now. So emailing it out always, anytime you have anything. So for videos, what I've always I also think that creating a blog article and an email to go along with it that is direct to your clients, because everybody wants to be on the winning team. So if my advisor is in Forbes, I want to know about it because I mean, obviously I trust them because they're my advisor, but now I have another level of trust of like, wow, it's not just me, someone else believes in you too. I'm on the winning team and I want to share that now. So emailing it out, always, anytime you have anything. So for videos, what I've always seen is if you email out your video, you are going to double your views. And it's going to be the same for blogs, press, articles that you're in. Sending it out to your fans is going to get you more visibility. Other areas that you can add your Forbes, social media, right? If Forbes would happen to post and link to you, I mean, that's ideal, but that doesn't always happen. You do want to tag them when you're posting it because that's going to get them to see it and it's going to get all of their viewers to see it. Sometimes they might even comment, which that's what we want. More views, right? You spend all this time getting this credibility. Now we want people to see it. So email signature, press release, blog, and social media posts. Those are the things that I'm like, easy. I know you still have to put the time in to create it, but easy ways to get that visibility. And then reusing it. I think we often overlook making our lives easier by reusing things we've already created, maybe giving it a little bit of a spin. Yes, we see it all the time. Like, I posted something yesterday. If I post it next week, I feel like it's redundant. Your audience is not seeing everything that you're posting. Like, this is a small fraction of people who are going to see everything. So it's okay to repeat your message. It's okay to repeat some graphics.
No, I agree. And one thing, you know, as we dive deeper into leveraging it, I want to make sure everybody understands that consistency. If listen, if when we talk about credibility marketing, first identify what you want to accomplish. You're going to do credibility marketing for 3 months. Then do not look at it as a growth pipeline or anything. If you want to do it for 3 to 6 months, that is a branding exercise, and that should be your expectations. And I work with folks where that's all they want.
Sure.
They come in, you know, listen, especially like a newer firm, you know, they've got, you know, expenses everywhere, not a ton of revenue right out of the gates. You know, oftentimes they'll come to me and they're like, Brian, you know, what I really just want is a big banner on my website that says "As Seen." And in 3 months, I can do that for you. In three months, absolutely. Listen, you can't be picky about what you talk about. Because you know, if you want that Wall Street Journal, you know, logo on your website, you might have to comment on, you know, something, you know, that's maybe not even that interesting to you. But yeah, I mean, I call that the bucket list approach. I mean, in a short-term campaign, you can do the bucket list where we just focus on getting in a handful of top-tier publications because all you need is one little quote in the Wall Street Journal, and now for the rest of your career, you can have that banner as seen in the Wall Street Journal. And that's a big deal for some people, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So there's the bucket list strategy. That's a branding exercise. And then there's the lifers who go all in on credibility marketing and use that as their primary growth driver. Those are, you know, my long-term clients and folks. I mean, you know, 10 years ago when I started that first firm I worked with, they were managing about 225 million in assets under management.
Yeah.
And, you know, the first few years I worked with them, you know, we were doubling year over year. And now, I mean, I don't, they outgrew me. You know, they're a juggernaut now. I think last time I checked, they're at 5 billion, something like that. AUM 10 years ago, 225 million. Yeah. So, when you're willing to commit like that firm did, and a lot of other folks are, yes, I mean, credibility marketing can absolutely be the primary, you know, you know, growth pipeline for your business, no doubt about that. But you have to be realistic about timelines, expectations, what your constraints are, everything. It takes a high level of self awareness to be
Yeah.
able to navigate and really decide what's appropriate for you. And Callie, I'm sure you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, actually, what you're saying, I have this talk that I give of why you should be like the two-toed sloth. And one of the things is only exerting energy on what matters. They're only spending their energy on food, sleep, making babies. Like that's it. They don't waste time doing anything else. And I think it's the same for anybody who's marketing is exerting energy where it counts. So it's building that credibility, but like Brian said, knowing why. What are you trying to get out of it? Are you trying to be the number one most sought after source for a specific topic? I think that can be very powerful, especially if you have a specific niche. Um, I'm trying to think of what a specific niche would be right now. Pension plans for oil companies, right? That's very specific. You now know I want to go in. I don't want to just be credible as an advisor. I want to be credible to this audience about this topic. And now you're going to try and release content around that. You're going to get earned media talking about that. You're going to make connections with people who want to hear about that or support that or are somehow connected, and just kind of building that web. I will say that takes some time, but it is easier when it's a specific topic for a specific audience, which is why you hear riches in the niches.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's a saying for a reason.
Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to do is kind of rewind back a little bit, to some of the biggest avenues of leveraging your credibility. We talked a lot about press. We talked about all the other ways that you have credibility. Um, to me, the website
Mm-hmm.
is the number one place to start.
Oh yeah.
I mentioned some people come to me with that bucket list strategy. They just want that big banner. They've got a small budget. All they can put money into is a 3-month campaign that's going to deliver them that big banner on their website. And a lot of those folks, when I do those campaigns, they end up calling me back then 2 years later. Once they're making money, and they're like, "All right, Brian, let's cook,"
Yeah.
and I'm ready for them.
This thing.
Yeah. But for a lot of especially smaller new firms, that banner is everything. So yes, being able to put that banner on your website, is a big deal. If we are getting you on TV, being able to embed, maybe your most recent CNBC appearance or Cheddar TV
Yep.
appearance or
Video
wherever you
clip.
have you. That's a
Because I don't know about you, Brian, but do you ever go to a website and you see like as seen on, and then you're like, how do I know? How do I know
well,
you were really there?
and that's actually true. And I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
I've written an op-ed. I wrote years ago. I wrote a fiery op-ed about this. There
Mm-hmm.
are They call themselves public relations firms out there where literally what they'll do is they'll say, oh yeah, we'll get you in all these publications, and you
Mm-hmm.
pay them whatever they're charging, 5, 10K.
Mm-hmm.
And all they do is put a press release out on the newswire.
Mm.
And so technically, yes, your story did go on that, but no journalist wrote it.
Right.
Nobody sees it. It's buried away in the press. These are the worst types of scammers.
Yeah.
Listen, every advisor listening, there are bad actors in your industry. Let me tell you something. As a public relations professional, there are some of the scummiest people you'll ever come across work in my industry,
Hmm.
and some of the best people. Um,
Sure.
just again, I don't want an industry to be defined by its worst actors, but yes, there are terrible, terrible actors who claim to be in my field.
Hmm.
And I actually, I'll talk to advisors, and they'll tell me, "Hey, Brian, we like what you're all about." But I just got this email the other day, and this person said they can guarantee I'm going to be on CNBC and
Hmm.
whatnot. In my field, listen, if it's true public relations, there are no guarantees.
Hmm.
If they are guaranteeing that they're going to get you a real, actual spot on CNBC, not a paid advertisement, they are lying to you.
It's just like leads. I guarantee I can get you 100 leads.
Right? We
No.
don't control. We have something called the free press in the
Yeah.
United States. Public relations people do not control journalists, and
Hmm.
thank God for that. That would be a nightmare of a society to live in if PR people controlled all the news. So no, I do not have control over editors and producers. Do I have good relationships? Absolutely. And
Hmm.
relationships I've invested a lot in and built because I've built up my credibility with these people.
Hmm.
But Callie, I'm so glad you led me to that, because that is a big clarification. Anybody thinking about diving into credibility marketing, I mean, know that there are folks who claim they do public relations for financial advisors, whatnot. Um, if it feels sleazy and scummy or too good to
Probably
be true,
is.
there are a lot of a lot of bad actors out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just Google them. That's all you got to do. If we're talking about credibility. Financial advisors, anybody listening, your clients nowadays are probably going to Google you before they decide to finally work with you.
That's why a
These
website is the
guaranteed
starting
PR,
point.
exactly. These guaranteed PR agencies out there, Google them. You will find nothing when you Google them.
Yeah.
Google me. I'm everywhere. Anyway, sorry, I didn't even want that to feel salesy. That's just something I'm so passionate about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it goes back to having those clips is, there are things that build credibility, a lot of things. Some build more credibility, right? Having that clip of you being interviewed by a news anchor is going to have a lot more weight than just having the Wall Street Journal logo on your site, because it's like verified credibility.
Yep, absolutely. What, Callie, when you and I initially, talked about collaborating for one of these, we were originally going to talk about SEO.
Yes.
And I thought, we've got a few minutes left. I thought, because SEO, I mean, I was showing up in Google results. There is a credibility factor in that as well. And,
Absolutely.
and that's one angle we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
Callie, do you want to talk a little bit about that, the importance of not only just showing up in relevant, Google searches, but having a little bit of control over what shows up in those searches?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, okay, SEO, I am a fan of, to a point. Um, there is a way to guarantee that you'll be at the top of the Google search, and it's with advertising. So if you want to know 100% you're going to be at the top of a Google search, advertise. If you want to spend your time making your website more friendly to being found in Google searches, that's where SEO comes in. One of the best ways to increase your SEO is getting in the news, because that's going to push you up. There's actually companies out there who their main objective is getting your name into news publications solely for the SEO alone, not even looking at, credibility. They just want your name there. Kind of like those links that you were talking about that we don't like. They do have a bit of a place in SEO, but it's going to be so much stronger if you're actually putting in for the credibility and actually having an article on you. But yeah, SEO is great. There are things that you can do. It's always changing. You always want to stay on top of it if that's one of your primary objectives. But if you want to guarantee you're going to be at the top, I suggest advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I agree with that. I mean, that advertising is always the guarantee.
Right. Yeah.
When you
now,
want,
it does take a lot of money.
When you want guarantee, you're not talking about public relations. You're talking about advertising.
Right.
Is a surefire guarantee.
Yeah.
There is a credibility control matrix that I often talk about. A billboard on the highway. When somebody drives by that, you've got full control over the message on that billboard because you bought it.
Yeah, right.
So full control, but everybody knows you bought it. So you're not really, and anybody can. I've bought billboards just for fun. I've bought billboards just to troll my favorite basketball team here in Philadelphia. It's not that hard. Anybody can do it for within reason, whenever they want. So the billboard. Listen, a lot of control. You pick what's on there. You know how long it's going to be up. Everything. Very little credibility. Now, a feature in your local paper, a lot of credibility, a lot less control, because these are real. Believe it or not, real journalists do still exist. The by and large, I know journalists get a bad rap, nowadays, whatnot. No, I know these people. I've worked with these people. Listen, by and large, most of them are very, very passionate and take a lot of pride in the work that they do. They are very smart, very talented people. There are bad actors in journalism. No doubt about that, just like any other profession. But no, the profession should not be defined by its worst actors. A lot of them are very, very, very ethical, very good at what they do. So yeah, they are not just going to write a puff piece, because I don't control them.
Right. Yeah.
Brands who want to be in that publication do not control them either. But listen, if you've got little to hide and you've got a great message and everything, of course, we want to go after those high credibility opportunities. You have to be willing to give away a little bit of control. They're not going to let you review that article. If you talk to a reporter, they don't let you review it and editorialize it before they publish it. Anything you said during that interview is fair game. Anything they dig up after that interview is fair game too. But listen, if you're confident in your brand, you do things the right way and whatnot, you should have very little to fear in going for those types of opportunities. So, that is, an important part of the conversation when we do talk about credibility marketing. Because if you want credibility, you do have to give up control.
Right.
To some degree.
Yeah.
Callie, before we wrap this up, I know there were several folks in my network on here who might just be meeting you for the first time. How do they get a hold of you if they want to follow up, learn more about Callie Collective, what you do, credibility marketing? How did they talk to you?
Yeah, best way is go to our website, KALLI, Callie Collective.com. And if you're still not sure if you're spelling it right, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I should be connected to this event. If not, I'll make sure to put a comment. I'll make it easy. Then you can find me. Direct message me.
Callie Fedosenko, Callie Collective. Thank you. Thank everybody who tuned in. Hope to continue the conversation. Credibility marketing is only continuing to be more important in this
Yeah,
evolving business.
something I know we're coming to the close here, but something we didn't talk about is AI and how I feel like the introduction of AI is only going to make credibility marketing even more important.
100,000%. Callie, we might have to have another one of these specifically talking about that,
Yeah,
because that is a wormhole. I am, or a rabbit hole. I am down to jump down with you.
right? Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about with that.
Yeah.
But for everybody who tuned in today, thank you so much. I'll see you again next month.